Hey everybody, how's it going? It's a Daily Shooter, and today I want to talk about transporting a handgun in the state of California. We'll also touch on rifles and shotguns, but mostly we're going to talk about handguns. So let me start off first by asking you guys a quick question, since it seems to be a topic of debate. How many of you out there think that this right here is legal to carry in a closed and locked container in the state of California? You guys might actually be surprised. Now, just like with every other video on this topic, I want to make sure you guys understand that I am not a lawyer, and this should not be considered legal advice. If you need actual legal advice, I suggest you contact a competent Second Amendment attorney that could answer your questions, because there are occasions where I get things wrong, and I have definitely not passed the bar. So please keep that in mind. But with that being said, I want to talk about the case that I showed you guys at the very beginning of the video, because this case would cause a lot of debate amongst the firearms community. So what we have here is a case that has two firearms in it. It has a Glock 19, has a Glock 17, it has loaded magazines, and a box of ammunition. The reason that this would cause debate is because in California, there is a belief that in order to transport a handgun, it has to be separate from any ammunition or loaded magazines. And some people would even say even unloaded magazines would have to be kept separate from the firearm. But in my research, I found that not to be the case. Now, I actually made a video years ago talking about this exact topic. And in that video, I gave people a challenge. I said, find me an instance, find me a penal code, find out where it says in the law that I cannot carry ammunition in the same container as my unloaded handgun. And nobody that or at least the last time I checked, nobody was able to come up with, a place where it actually says that. So again, I'm going to put in all the information so you guys can read what I'm talking about right along next to the video. But what I'm seeing on the California Department of Justice when it comes to transporting firearm, it says that you have to be at least 18 years of age or older and legally able to own and or possess a firearm. So if you don't meet those requirements right off the bat, then you can't transport a firearm in the state of California at all. Okay, so please keep that in mind. Now, the other requirements are that a handgun be in a locked container and unloaded. Nowhere in this particular article does it say that it has to be locked in a container, unloaded, and then separate from the ammunition. It just says that it has to be in a locked container and unloaded. Now remember, a locked container means that it has to be in a separate locked container like this. It can't be in a glove box or a center console. Even if that glove box or center console requires a key to access, it has to be in a separate locked container or in the trunk of your car. So again, that's another thing to keep in mind. Don't throw it in your center console thinking it has a key on it and that you're going to be good, because it specifically says at the DOJ's website that that's not okay. So anyway, if we go ahead and we read that right there, again, it doesn't say anything about having ammunition or even loaded magazines in the same container as your unloaded firearm, which leads us on to the next topic. What is considered by law or by definition from the California Department of Justice to be a loaded firearm? Because some people would say that just having a loaded magazine in the same container as a firearm could make it loaded. And again, I am reading the definition directly from the California Department of Justice website, and I don't see that to be the case either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and read the definition of what's considered a loaded firearm in the state of California directly from the California Department of Justice Bureau of Firearms website. I'm also going to put that up on the screen so that you guys can read along with me. Now try and keep in mind that there is no pride here. Okay, if I read this incorrectly and you feel like you need to correct me, please put that down in the comment section. I just want to make sure that the information that goes out there is correct and that misinformation is kind of squashed here. So don't put information in the comment section that's just hearsay or you heard your dad say that that's the way you're supposed to do it or something. If you have actual information that's verifiable that you can put in the comment section that would correct any of this information, please, by all means, do so. I'd love to read it. So let's go ahead and read the definition of what's considered a loaded firearm in the state of California. A firearm is deemed to be loaded when there is a live cartridge or shell in or attached in any manner to the firearm, including but not limited to the the firing chamber, magazine, or clip thereof attached to the firearm. Now below that it goes on to talk about muzzle loaders, and you can't have the cap, ball, and powder in there. It would be considered a loaded firearm at that time. Nonetheless, if we talk about the information above that, what I read here, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is A, you obviously can't have a round in the chamber. Okay, if you have a firearm like a shotgun, or you have something that has a magazine tube below it, maybe like a lever action or something like that, that cannot be loaded because it's also considered attached to the firearm. So if you have a shotgun with a magazine tube, can't have any shells in it. You have a lever action gun with rounds that are in a tube below the gun, it's still attached to the gun and can't have any rounds in it because it's attached to the firearm. In here it says you can't have any magazine or clip thereof attached to the firearm. Okay, that doesn't say anywhere to me that you can't have a loaded magazine. It just says that that loaded magazine cannot be attached to the firearm. So if I have a handgun and I have a magazine, and the handgun and magazine are separate from each other, even if they're in the same case, because remember, again, in the original part that we read, it didn't say that they had to be separated at all. It just said that the firearm had to be unloaded. If we look at those two and we put them together, then you can see that the firearm is still considered unloaded, even if I have a loaded magazine and that loaded magazine is in the same container. Because again, and I hate to keep reiterating the same thing, but it says that it has to be unloaded and in a locked container. Nowhere does it say that that locked container cannot contain ammunition. Now, also try and keep in mind in the state of California, there's going to be different transportation requirements for different types of firearms. So the requirements that are considered to be legal for handguns could be different than those for rifles and shotguns. And now with new California state laws, you're also looking at different requirements for what's considered to be a registered AW in California. So we've already gone over the requirements for a handgun, but what's the requirement for a standard non-AW rifle or shotgun? Well, a rifle or shotgun, since it's not considered to be a firearm that is concealable, just needs to be in a case in your vehicle. It doesn't need to be locked in any way. It just needs to be in a case and it needs to be unloaded, or it needs to be in the trunk of the firearm and unloaded. That's basically all there is to it. Okay, so you can go ahead and you can transport it that way and it's perfectly legal. Now, when it comes to a registered AW in the state of California, they went ahead and changed that. So if you were one of those knuckleheads that went ahead and registered your bullet button rifle as an AW in the state of California, you now have more restrictive transportation requirements. Now, your transportation requirements requires that your firearm go from your house directly to your vehicle and directly from your vehicle to a specific specified location, such as a shooting range, a training class, or something like that. It cannot go with you from there to the grocery store, to the park, and then to work, and then come home again with you at the end of the night. It has to go from point A to point B and then back to point A again. So it cannot travel around with you. It has to go from a specific location to another specific location and then back. Now, I should also mention that when it comes to rifles and shotguns, non-AW rifles and shotguns in California, the transportation from your home to the vehicle also does not have to be in a locked container. Just throw it in a case, take it directly to your vehicle, and that's considered good to go. Now, I don't want to forget to tell you that also, if you have a registered AW in the state of California, on top of the fact that you have to transport it between A and B and back again, it also has to be in a locked container. So it has to be in a locked container from the moment that it leaves your house. That means walking down your driveway to your vehicle. In your vehicle, it has to remain locked to the point where you're taking it, and then locked until you get to the actual spot where you're actually going to have fun with it. So keep that in mind, that it has to be in a locked container at all times unless you're actually at the point where you're going to be using it. Now, I may be wrong, but from what I read from the California Department of Justice Bureau of Firearms website, this would be legal to carry as long as it's locked. This is a lockable container right here. It is not considered a glove box or part of the vehicle at all. It's a lockable container. It has a firearm in it that is not loaded because there is no ammunition magazine attached to the firearm. There's nothing in the chamber or anything else. We do have loaded magazines in the same case. We also have ammunition and a tourniquet in the same case. But as long as this is locked, from what I can see, this would be legal to carry. Now, it's not ideal, and after I made that original video years ago, I switched to a different carry method. I went ahead and switched to something like this, and that's only because a case like I was just showing you could be easily stolen from a vehicle, and you don't want your firearm stolen. There's new reporting requirements, and you don't want anything like that to happen to you, right? So what I do now is I have a lockbox like this. Comes with two keys. I have a lockbox like this, and I have a steel tethered cord that is wrapped around the frame or the frame of the seat in my car. So I have this container right here, which is, you know, considered separate from the vehicle. I have it tethered to the car with a steel cable, which is obviously not foolproof. People can still get into it. They can still steal it and access it or whatever, but it would make it a lot more difficult, and it does meet California requirements for a locked container. A locked container has to have a key or some type of padlock or some type of combination lock in order to be considered legal for transportation. So as you can see here with the Glock 17, I can have the Glock 17 and several magazines. If I turn it up, I can fit more, but I can have several magazines in there. I can go ahead and lock this thing down. And there it is in a locked container and ready to go. So try and keep that in mind. Anyway, guys, that's the information that I get. That's the information that I've obtained throughout the years, and I wanted to present that to you so that it's out there. And again, I welcome any criticism to what I have presented to you guys, as long as it's factual, down in the comment section. I want to thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys learned something from this. It's definitely a topic that is very, very confusing. I know even a lot of law enforcement officers that just have a hard time navigating around this stuff. Nonetheless, thank you all very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, subscribe. Have a great day.